Thank you, ma'am. Let's go ahead and start, I think. Ma'am?
Yes, Yandel. So, shall we enter?
Go ahead, Alicia.
Thank you. So, nothing can dim the light that shines from within. A warm welcome to everyone. So, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, all of you, and we are very, very happy to have you here with this evening. Holy Cross College Trichy and Talentees, we have brought you for this 5 days faculty development program on education and career prospects in the BPO sector. This is the successfully, this is the third year with your great support. Thank you all. The beginning is the most important part of work. So let's get started with prayer. Aishwarya ma'am, can we start with a prayer?
Father God, I wonder how I managed to exist without the knowledge of your parenthood and your loving care. But now I am your child, I am adopted in your family, and I can never be alone. 'Cause Father, you're that beside me. I will sing your praises, I will sing your praises, I will sing your praises forevermore. I will sing your praises, I will sing your praises, I will sing your praises forevermore. Father God, I wonder how I managed to exist without the knowledge of your parenthood and your loving care. But now I am your child, I am adopted in your family, 'cause I can never be alone. Father God, you're there beside me. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises forevermore. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises forevermore. Prayer. O Heavenly Father, as we have commenced with an open heart and mind in this virtual heart, meet to seek your blessings, we seek your mercy to share this event with your grace. God of knowledge and wisdom, we look up for your blessings. Enlighten our speaker as they act as your instrument to convey your desired plans. Bless each and every participant with endurance and instill in them a sense of keenness to learn and explore more. May we make best use of this faculty development program with your blessings. This prayer we ask in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, a warm welcome to the audience. Here is a small announcement. Audience, we have some great speakers lined up here, so please take this opportunity and ask questions, and you can clarify all your doubts, and we will always encourage having an interactive session. So please take this as an opportunity, and we'll be having your questions at the end of the session. So now we have a very special speaker here, Mr. Leo Fernandez. I call upon Entil to welcome our speaker. Over to you, Entil.
Thank you, Alicia. Leo Fernandez, he's the CEO and co-founder of Talentees. He's a thought leader in education and consultant and coach to school leadership, teachers, and parents. He has 18 years of outsourcing leadership experience in Asia Pacific consulting with servicing global and regional clients. Leo was previously a partner managing director with Accenture, Singapore. He was also the COO with Hewitt Outsourcing. He has overseen teams in sales, operations, client and account management, technology, finance, and HR. He has experience on transformation programs with global clients from Asia and for Asia, and he's worked with multinational clients across a wide industry and geographic spectrum. He's a speaker at education and industry conferences and writes regularly for Business Line on campus and The Hindu in school. Welcome, Mr. Leo Fernandez.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yentel. A big thank you to Sister Bridget, the principal of Holy Cross, Josephine ma'am, the HOD of BCom BPO. Thank you so much for working along to make this program reality, and especially for inviting me to be one of the speakers at this day. A huge good evening to everyone who's on. I look forward to us having a fruitful session. I will encourage you all to speak a little more so that it's a little more interactive. So we'll try and see if we can kick that off. But a big thank you, and thank you so much, Alicia, for emceeing, Yenkel for the introduction. And I must compliment Aishwarya, who's been doing the prayer song every day. You have an absolutely lovely voice, and the praise to God sounds sweeter when you have a voice like that. So God bless you. Thank you for every day kicking us off with the Almighty's presence. So I'll go ahead and share screen. Josephine, okay to start off?
Go right ahead, Leo.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. I'll just share screen. Yeah.
இப்பயும் சொல்லுவேன் பார்த்தா வேலை பார்க்க மாட்டாங்க. என்னன்னா வேலை பார்க்க மாட்டாங்க மீன்ஸ் அவங்களுக்கு தெரியல அப்படின்றாங்க.
Nesta, if you could unmute yourself,
அவங்க எவ்வளவோ தேவலான்ற நிலைமை.
Nesta,
Yes, Angel, I have much.
Thank you.
A kind request to the audience, keep your audio on mute, please. Thank you. We would really appreciate, like we are very grateful at the end if you could ask your queries, but at present, please keep your audio on mute. Thank you.
One second. Good evening. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and get started. I thought, just the past few days, there weren't too many questions at the end. So I thought maybe we'll begin with some discussion and some questions. So I thought, since for all of you faculty, we've had a difficult last 1.5 years. So I thought let's begin, since we're talking about a BPO classroom, and by implication, a classroom that is somewhat different from a regular classroom. I thought let's begin by asking all the faculty on the call, what have you tried to do differently in your classroom, online or on campus, in the last 3 years? So I'm taking it pre-COVID as well. So what have you tried to do differently in your classroom that has accelerated learning, that has, engaged and motivated students differently, that has made your subject more engaging and interesting? So anything, maybe if a few of you could share, so please unmute, and if a few of you could share. So we get started straight away with a little bit of interaction before you go through the rigor of having to listen to me. So it need not be revolutionary, even something small. So anything small that you have tried to do differently in your classroom. I am going to give it a few more seconds. I'm the persistent type.
Maybe if someone is a little bit more comfortable speaking in Tamil.
Any language, as long as your colleagues understand you and can translate. So do I assume that nothing has been tried differently, or you're just not wanting to talk about it on a public forum? One of the points I wanted to make is, when you get faculty together and we are not engaging, it's no surprise that the students don't. We very often, sometimes, at least personally, a lot of my colleagues and I on Talentees, we always wonder why students don't switch on their camera, and though they tend to be a lot more noisy than you. So hopefully you'll get a little more noisy and learn from the students, and ask a few more questions, any comments, any suggestions. So even if you're not sharing right now, I'd like you to think about something that you've tried differently in your classroom. Think about something that you have experimented with. Maybe it worked well, maybe it didn't work well. But I think part of our journey as teachers, as faculty in universities and colleges, is that we are trying to make things in the classroom better for the students. And that's why we need to be experimenters, we need to be risk takers. And a program like the BCom BPO that has kickstarted in Holy Cross, and I really wanted to dedicate this presentation to the first batch of students who graduated earlier this year from the BCom BPO program at Holy Cross. A fantastic bunch of young women who came into the program unsure about what it was, but eventually, completely embraced it. And it was amazing to hear how their 3-year experience translated into them not just being, better prepared for BPO, but into very, very confident and effective communicators. So let's kickstart our conversation on the BPO classroom itself. So I wanted to begin by asking, if we are teaching swimming, would our classroom look like this? And I think most of us would agree that if we were teaching swimming, we would do everything we could to have the classroom not look like this and look more like this. Because if you are teaching swimming, you want your classroom to replicate as much as possible the skills, the practical reality that your students will face. And that's how I wanted to kind of frame this reflection today. What should we do to ensure that our regular classrooms in our colleges, how can we change it? How can we adapt it? How can we try some experiments to ensure that we are able to best simulate the industry, the job, and the career that we are preparing our students for? So keep this kind of picture in your mind that if I was teaching swimming, then I would want my classroom to look like this and not like my previous picture. So what we'll reflect on is, not necessarily in a very, defined compartments, but what the questions we'll try and answer, what do BPO employers need from students, freshers when they take them? What should the course therefore deliver to the students? And how can a BPO classroom ensure this? So in a nutshell, that's what we'll try and look at as we go through the next, 30 to 45 minutes. So I was speaking to some of the second year students, I think a week ago, and I was sharing with them what is at a very, very high level, what are some of the things that have changed in the BPO industry. So the old BPO industry, and you heard this from your day one speaker, Nalin, you heard it from Ed Valenzuela yesterday, that the old BPO was about transactions, sometimes as simple as data entry, sometimes, just transferring things from one system into another. So it was all about transactions. The BPO value was all about saving costs. So even India as a destination became a preferred destination because the costs were cheaper to bring it here. So that really was one of the biggest drivers of the old BPO. Pricing from BPO providers was usually cost plus. And usually it tended to be very siloed. So there were particular verticals that were outsourced, and generally it would, even if it was within one company, it would sit completely on different floors with rarely any interaction between different processes that have been outsourced. But the new BPO is about transformation. So our students who are entering the new BPO are not just going to be folk who will do transactions. They are expected to play a role in transforming not just the work that they're doing with their employer, but importantly for their client's business. How can they transform the client's businesses, add value to the client's business and to the client's customers? So I think that's a big leap, a big shift that has taken place in the BPO industry. And therefore, there's a big shift in skills that new BPO employees serving this new BPO will require. We're also, as I said, looking to add business value. Pricing, for example, for a lot of BPO companies has now moved to gain share, which means that if I save the client money, then they'll pay me a share of that. So that's a lot more skin in the game that BPO providers are today expected to provide in their relationship with clients. And finally, it's no longer siloed. It's across verticals. You expect, in fact, if you just look at credit cards now, for example, or working out a credit score, you are looking at multiple types of data that has to come in. In banking, for example, you don't want just the credit cards division analyzing their data. You want to look at the banking history of the customer. You want to look at their transactions, what kind of payments they've done in the past, what kind of behavior there is, the profile. So to do that, you have to go across and not be too vertical. So I think that is something that the new BPO is asking. So I was talking to the folk that BPO is no longer just night shift, because previously it was voice work and some kind of customer service, which was just night shift. But when you're talking about transformation, it's round the clock. There's a lot more opportunity to look at jobs and careers that are not just necessarily the night shift type of work. So it's critical thinking, which employers place a huge premium on, and how well our students understand business. There's a much broader range of opportunities for our students, and increasingly we are seeing BPO providers go beyond the big towns. So these are some of the changes, and I thought it's good to have that context before we begin. I just pulled a job description. This is from my former employer, Accenture. So this is one of their public posts. So I picked out 2 job descriptions that Accenture had posted. One was for an associate in the record to report. Another was for an associate in order to cash. Now, the reason I pull these out is this is what we have to keep in mind when we are asking ourselves, what should the BPO classroom look like? What should the BPO classroom teach? This is where we begin. We have to reverse engineer from the industry point of view. What is industry looking for from our students when they leave the portals of our college, when they leave the portals of our universities? These are the folk who are going to employ them, pay them salaries, ensure that they have successful careers. So I think it is important for us to ask, what are they looking for? What do they want from our students? And if you look at some of the points which I've highlighted in yellow, so adaptable and flexible problem-solving skills, agility for quick learning, ability to work well in a team, basic statistics, an understanding of business. If you see on the order to cash associate, the ability to perform under pressure, problem-solving skills, written and verbal communication. So one of the questions we have got to ask ourselves is, how much does what we do in the classroom match with these requirements? So whether it's Capgemini or Deloitte or Wipro or Infosys, any of these folk who are going to employ our students, and if we look at their job descriptions, we have to ask ourselves how much of the classroom, content, methodology, practice helps our students achieve these skills, achieve this mindset. So the reason this slide is up is really to put the starting point of thinking about the BPO classroom. Where do we need to begin with? So I wanted to use this time to broadly cover maybe 3 areas. So you're looking at what in terms of knowledge, what in terms of skills, and what in terms of practice can we give our students during the 3 years that they typically spend with us in a BCom or BBA or BSc Computer Science, any of these arts and science degrees where a BPO specialization is possible. So if we broadly look at these 3 areas of knowledge, skills, and practice, I thought we'll reflect on that as we go through the reflection today. I'll just pause quickly and ask if there's any question, comment before we kick on to the rest. Alicia, do I have any questions or comments in the chat box? Because I can't see that.
Previously, Madam Punita Nancy, she has raised her hand, sir.
Okay, so Punita, did you have a question or a comment?
Madam Punita?
Okay, we'll come back in a few minutes and again. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yes, from the slide 1, right, you have asked, so pre-COVID and during the COVID time, what we have tried differently.
Yes,
so pre-COVID time, so actually I have tried, to just make it more interactive instead of only doing this one-way teaching.
Okay.
So making one-way communication in the classroom. So we used to make more of changes in terms of playing videos and having more number of discussions rather than just, standing in front and teaching the subjects. So having more number of discussions and involving the students on the case studies. So every time once after the topic we take, we used to share some case study and make the students to discuss on the cases in the upcoming classes. Like that we have tried. And later on during the COVID time, we have shifted to this online, right? So we were not able to even see the students' face and we kept it in home and seeing only the alphabets and taking classes. So that time it was really, really difficult for even getting yes or no answers from the students. So discussions and all, we can't even imagine, right? So the case study or something. So we have changed like seminar into webinar, and that is the greatest, difference. So usually seminars, they used to mug up and come and present or read out something in the classes, but in this webinar, they prepare PPT and they share it. Professionally, they do make PPT. They spend too much of time on preparing the PPT rather than, preparing for the presentation. So we could see different steps. Yeah, that's what the difference, the things which I have tried differently.
No,
Just I
thank you,
wanted to share that.
Punita, and congratulations. I think that's quite a leap to be able to bring in a different methodology into the classroom and really put the onus on students to get involved in the learning journey and not just be passive spectators in the classroom. So that's a exciting start already. And honestly, I must congratulate all teachers who have gone through this 1.5 years, especially online classes. I can definitely tell you that from my side, I find the online sessions when we do it for our children in our leadership programs, it is extremely difficult, and it's something that I've never been used to. We're used to running it for adults sometimes, but children, where we are used to a classroom environment where there's a lot of interaction, a lot of energy, it was very, very difficult. So I must congratulate all the teachers and professors, all the staff who have gone through the Corona time very heroically, I must say. So thank you, Punita. Thank you so much for sharing. So I thought we'll just begin with knowledge. I think I'm not intending to give a very comprehensive list, but I would expect BCom students who are specializing in BPO to have their finance and accounting fundamentals right. So as Ed said yesterday, when they come for an interview, you're not wanting to spend time understanding finance basics because you expect them to come with that knowledge. But I would just add the extra angle that it's important for students to not just understand the what about these fundamentals, but about why. For example, why is cash flow so important? Why is inventory turnover an important metric? So to be able to understand why behind the finance and accounting fundamentals and not just the what, because the why will help them add value when they go to the BPO workspace. The what is something which will help them do the transactions, but the why will help them add value. The why will help them really, understand what they're trying to do for the client much, much better. One thing I think which is very, very important is for students to understand how business works. After all, the B in BPO is business. So students must have a good understanding of how different businesses work. What are the essentials in the telecom industry? What happens in the hospitality industry? What are the dynamics of the e-commerce companies that are running around? What are the challenges they are facing? What are they focused on doing? What are some of the changes hitting their business? And therefore, how does the BPO provider need to adapt? So I think it's extremely important. And Punita, when you mentioned about discussions and case studies, it would be a great idea for faculty to spend time taking a case study of a business and saying, okay, now Big Basket has just been taken over by the Tata Group. What does that mean for Big Basket as a company? What does it mean for the Tata Group? What does it mean for Big Basket's old customers? What does it mean for their marketing and business development going forward? What benefits of the Tata Group can they take advantage of? What are going to be some of the challenges of being absorbed into the Tata Group? So understanding how business works, I think, is very, very important. And there, it's really lends itself to a discussion format, a case study format, a brainstorming format that I think is very, very useful to do in the BPO classroom. And finally, I think particularly in finance and the BCom background, understanding compliance, laws, and consequences. Because in any kind of BPO scenario, one of the almost, shall I say, harakiri or suicide type of errors is anything to do with compliance. Because what you don't want to have your client land up in is a compliance soup. And therefore, for every single person in the BPO provider to understand laws, to understand what is the meaning of compliance and why it matters, the consequences is beyond critical. And therefore, I think during the 3 years that we spend it with them, part of building the knowledge is to help them understand that. As I said, this is not a comprehensive list, but just a few that I thought are worth reflecting on. The important mindset shift, I think, that all of us teaching in both schools and in universities need to make is that very often our classrooms, our teaching, our methodology is built around the curriculum. The curriculum is the largest circle. We have university requirements that we have to cater to. We are teaching to exams. We have to follow timetables. We have to take attendance. So very often the textbook drives the classroom. What we need to cover for the exam drives the classroom. We have a small circle there, which is the students. And as I say in the slide, the main thing is to keep the main thing, and that is the students. So how do we as faculty ask ourselves, can I make my whole classroom, my approach to teaching student-centric? While all the other things are important, and unfortunately, we have to live with every one of them. We have exams, that's a fact of life. We have university requirements. We have requirements from the Ministry of Education. We have curriculum requirements. All of those are there. But can we make the biggest circle the students? So I would say that the biggest challenge of the BPO classroom, and in fact, any classroom, is can we go back to asking ourselves what's best for the students? I think this little quote from Tony Cotton, very, very inspiring quote that I love very much. But the curriculum should not be seen as a fixed list of content. If a curriculum can be seen as a map, as a landscape, there's always plenty of time to explore. And I think what he's trying to address is usually the subconscious fear that most of us as professors and teachers have. Will I cover the curriculum? Will I be able to cover the curriculum? I've got so limited time to do it in, and therefore I have to cover the curriculum. But as the old saying goes, there's no point covering ground if we don't cultivate anything in it. So I think if we change the mindset to the curriculum being a map, being a landscape, not a fixed list. And I think the first speaker on day one, Nalan Singh, also kind of referred to this when he said, there's no point treating the curriculum as a fixed, kind of stake in the ground around which students have to revolve. It should be the other way around. We should look at the curriculum serving the student. So I know this is difficult in our education system. I know there are challenges with doing this, but I think it is useful for us if we push the boundaries, if we kind of start taking some risks and ask ourselves, can we get to having the curriculum serve the students instead of the other way around? So one way we can start doing this is to design with students and not just for the students. If we can start partnering with students, asking them, co-creating them, and this again was referred to in the earlier days talks. How can we get students involved in the learning journey? Asking them what works best for them. How would they like to learn? What kind of learning approach do they most prefer? And move it around based on that. Then I think when it's a co-created approach, then students feel a much, much higher ownership for the learning journey. So those were a few points that I thought on the knowledge front that we can keep in mind. Let's move on to skills. I think critical thinking and problem solving is really, as I said at the beginning, most BPO employers, many other sectors as well, would really pay a premium for this skill. If someone comes in with the ability to think through, to say that, okay, this is how what the problem is, this is how I can analyze this problem, and here are some possible solutions, and these are the implications of those solutions. And I'll just talk through a quick case study later on. But I would say this is one of the things we have to ask ourselves when we are teaching in the BPO classroom. Is what I've done over the last 1 hour, how has it helped the students think critically? In my interaction with them, how have I built this as a habit? How have I got them into the path of thinking solution? And of course, the 4 C's matter. In Talentees, we call it the confidence, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Now, creativity, of course, in the BPO sector, I would say has to be controlled creativity. You can't afford to be too creative in following the process. You must be creative in designing the process, but not necessarily in following it. And I would urge our BPO classrooms to treat English as a skill. Very often, English is kind of counterposed to English education versus mother tongue education. And I think that's a false choice. There's no debate between, the importance of our mother tongue, the importance of learning things in our mother tongue. But I think many of our students lose out in the BPO job sector when they head for that interview because they've not developed English as a skill. And therefore, I would recommend to all faculty, stop treating English as a language. Treat it as a skill that the BPO industry wants, because it's, whether we like it or not, it's the lingua franca of most clients. Even clients in non-English speaking countries will pick up on English because they realize that's the language that has to be spoken. The third bit that I wanted to spend time on was that learnability for our students is going to be more important than learning. I think most of us will recognize that. Just take the BPO industry. 1.5 years ago, pre-COVID, the BPO industry was different. The guidelines that they ran their businesses on, compliance, privacy, work from home, all of these, we didn't even know work from home. That didn't even exist. You expected everybody to come to the office, with rare exceptions, and work from the office. So the point I'm making is that the whole industry is transformed in 1.5 years. So anything that I taught to the students based on what industry did 1.5 years ago is already outdated. And in your 3-year program, whatever you teach the students in year 1, year 2, and year 3 will be outdated by the time they graduate. So when they leave college, most of their learning, many things other than some compliance, perhaps in some fundamental of accounting or finance, those might not change. But a lot of the other things would have changed. And therefore, we have to give students that most prized skill, which is how to learn. So we have to spend time in our classes asking students, okay, here's something that we want to learn about. Now let's just see how all of us can learn about it and do it together. So this is not a teacher teaching a concept, but working with the students on the skill of learning. So can we Google it? Can we watch a video and listen to what this person is saying about this? Can we go to the library and research this? Can we call an expert in and have them discuss this concept with us? So I would say this is, as a former BPO person myself, I would say this is the skill I prized, the ability to learn, because the shelf life of processes, of technology, of practices is so short now that someone with a high learnability quotient becomes a star. And I'd say the other skill is about being able to differentiate between signal and noise. And again, we'll just talk through a quick example. I love this quote from Erno Rubik. I'm sure most of you, played at some time in your life the Rubik's Cube. So the creator of the Rubik's Cubes, this is one of his fantastic, quotes that I really loved. Learning is not the accumulation of knowledge. It is building the capacity to find new possibilities in novel circumstances. And I think that's a good kind of sentence for us as teachers, as faculty, to keep in mind, because sometimes we mistake what we are supposed to do in the classroom as helping the students accumulate knowledge. But that's not our primary role. Our primary role is not to help them accumulate knowledge. It is really helping them build this capacity that Erno Rubik refers to. So in terms of the skill building, again, I was sharing this with the students a week ago. I just thought it'd be useful to share it with all of you as well. Very quickly, I would say that, all my BPO teams, all the ops managers, COOs who work for me, this was one thing I used to tell all of them. When you come to work, carry a microscope and carry a telescope. You need both. You need to be able to deal with the details of today, but you also need to be able to look at the big picture. You need to be able to understand how do these details make sense in the big picture. So for example, helping a student understand, a balance sheet entry, what does that mean in the big picture context? Or doing a, record to report transaction. What is this transaction that you have just done? What does that mean in the big picture? So I think that is one skill. The other is being able to look back and look ahead. Look back for lessons, mistakes, errors, insights from the past, but also to anticipate, to ask the what if questions. What if this happened? What would we do? What if this took place? What would we do? For example, a very fundamental kind of looking ahead that takes place in the BPO industry is what is called DRP, or disaster recovery, where if a particular center goes down, there's a flood, there's a power outage, and one center goes down, the BPO industry necessarily has to think ahead and prepare for that disaster. Now, that's something most other industries won't think too much about, but in a BPO industry, you can't afford for the services to stop. So it has to move from site A to site B seamlessly, where your client doesn't even know the difference. And that means looking ahead. So you're learning from lessons of the past, but you're also looking ahead. And this is an important skill to be able to give to our students. And finally, I would say, as I just mentioned, consistent process and controlled creativity. Creativity comes in process design, in problem solving, but not in following the process. There you don't want, I used to tell my folk managing processes, saying that, no creativity here. Keep the creativity out here. Once we have designed the process, we follow it. Someone has a brainwave about how to improve the process, let's go back and redo the process. But following the process, and that's what Ed was talking about yesterday, that sometimes you may have students who are kind of born with that, let's call it a creative streak of not following instructions. They will not survive in BPO process work. I mean, they may do a good job in some other parts of the BPO industry, but if someone doesn't follow the process, doesn't follow what has been designed, then that's not necessarily a good fit. So that's important for us to test that match in our students and help build that skill. I was talking about the example of one of the recent goofs that took place in the BPO industry. You had a large bank. We had an Indian BPO and a transaction that happened to the bank's customer, which was Revlon. Revlon is the company that does cosmetics, perfumes. It was supposed to be $8 million that was supposed to be transferred to Revlon. And in the BPO industry, the process was a 6 eyes process. You have a maker, checker, approver. So 6 eyes followed that transaction for that 8 million to be transferred to the client's account. Actually, what got transferred was $900 million. So $900 million was transferred between the BPO provider and their client, which is the bank. Somehow the 6 eyes process failed. Maker, checker, approver, all of them somehow got it wrong. And instead of 8 million, 900 million was passed. Now, we should be able to take that incident and discuss it in the classroom and ask ourselves, students, what would we do to prevent this from happening? Why did it happen? Why do you think, all 3 of them got it wrong? And to build these skills, you need to be able to take these real life situations into the BPO classroom that you're not going to find in a textbook. This will not be in a textbook. It will be in a blog, it will be in a news report, it will be in the daily newspapers. That's where we need to find the source material for a BPO classroom. I often, say that for all of us who are in the teaching, facilitating, the gold standard is for us to shut up. I know I'm not practicing that right now because I'm talking, but usually when we get together face to face, I try to practice it at least a little bit, which is whoever is doing the talking is doing the learning. That's a big, I would say, aspiration for all of us educators. Can we try that out in our classrooms to get our students to be doing the talking? Because when they're doing the talking, they are doing the learning. And for us to be able to move into that role of a facilitator, we need to change this fundamental belief. If we can change this belief system in ourselves, then we'll encourage a lot more of them getting involved in that learning journey. How can we bring industry folks? So now, for example, just look at this session taking place where Antoinette Irwin, who's one of the top women business leaders in the world, she had some of the HR processes for one of the largest companies in the world. Now, to get the benefit of having her in the classroom with these students of ours. So what all is happening here? One is they are being inspired because she's a woman leader and she has, against many barriers and against many odds, she has, risen to success. They are being educated because, for example, she collaborated with Accenture in a BPO process, and therefore she is able to educate about, what happens in the BPO industry, what as a customer do I need to get right. And the students are literally able to embed themselves in that industry situation by listening to industry folk. So I think increasing the number of people from industry that we can get into our classroom actually makes it possible for our students to almost psychologically transport themselves into industry. We should have a lot more internships. We should have a lot more short-term assignments that students can take. But in the meantime, let's try and get more and more industry folk into the classroom. And of course, you want students to be buzzing around in conversations, in discussions, small groups, debate a particular problem, discuss it threadbare. That's what you'd like to have in our classrooms. And one of the things I've always, looked at here, which I was very grateful to Sister Bridget for having the vision to see this, is how can we even physically design the classroom to enable this dynamic in the classroom, not to have it look like a regular classroom, but design it with workstations, just like a BPO office would look, and have students get familiar with that physical environment so that the dynamics are different. Discussions happen, a consultation with a team leader, raising their hand for, to clarify a doubt with the faculty. So the physical environment of a BPO classroom also contributes to it being, having different kinds of conversations. So I think all of this really is part of the skills that we're building. I love to use the example of from the software world. In 1997, there was this guy, Eric S. Raymond. So this was before the time of Linux. So he came in 1997 and he wrote this tremendous paper called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. It was musings on Linux and open source. So the traditional approach in software development was the cathedral approach, top down. So very command and control, very, very controlled process for rolling out software. You'd never have something released until it was completely tested by the central team. So that was the cathedral approach. And then suddenly Linux came and they were doing, rolling out the code, telling anybody, please fiddle with it, make it better. So he called this the cathedral versus the bazaar approach. And my suggestion is that our BPO classroom has to be more of a bazaar, less of a cathedral. And that means we change the way we structure the classroom. Our own role as educators in the classroom changes. In the cathedral, it would be us driving the classroom. But now in the bazaar, learning can happen anywhere. We're really asking that, learning could happen student to student, teacher to student, student to teacher. So many kinds of learning become possible when you convert the BPO classroom into a bazaar and not the cathedral. Now, cathedral also is known for being very silent, and I'm sure the bazaar will be a lot more noisy. We'll learn to, figure that. As long as it's organized chaos, I think we can, have a great experience in transforming the BPO classroom into a genuine learning space. I'll just pause and do a quick time check. Alicia, Yentil, one of you, can you just give me a quick time check? How many minutes do I have?
So it's 6:20, so we have 25 minutes, sir.
Okay, great. So here's again a problem kind of case study which I was giving to the students in a BPO classroom. There was this famous World War II example. Allied airplanes which were going into Germany to bomb Germany were returning riddled with bullet holes. So, they were experiencing, a lot of the planes were crashing. So the Allies Air Force decided to do a study, a very, very mathematical and statistical study. So they said, let's collect the data, which is all the bullet holes on the planes. So they looked at all the planes that were coming in, literally counted the bullet holes and saw where the bullet holes were. So they realized that most of the bullet holes were on, the wings, a little bit of the fuselage, and on two parts of the tail. So their solution was, let's get some really strong armor and put it on these places where we can see these bullet holes. But there was this guy called Abraham Wald. He looked at the data and he said, we have got something fundamentally wrong that we are missing here. And his insight to the teams was, we are studying the data only from the planes that have come back. We don't have data from the planes that were shot down. So his contrarian view was that these places where you're seeing the bullet holes are not the vulnerable parts because the plane survived. So he said, let's look at where we can't see any bullet holes, the engine, the fuselage, the main portion of the tail, and that's where we need to put the armor. So literally, they had to look for the places in this data sheet where there were no holes and buttress that with stronger armor. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that our students, we have to prepare them not just data and information, and I would say that is the old BPO. The old BPO was about data and information. But here in new BPO, we want to analyze the information and we want to draw the right insights from that information. So we need to challenge our students, as I shared a few slides ago, to differentiate between signal and noise. So there's data. There's a lot of data that comes out in today's world. But how do we process that data so that we pick the right insights? And I think all of us as faculty need to trial this, experiment with this, test drive this in our classrooms, challenging students to draw the right insights. Not just, look at the data and say this is what it is, but to really ask those questions that helps them gain the right insights. So the third segment was about building practice. And here we're saying we're helping the students gain some knowledge. We're helping them build some skills. What are the practices that we want in a BPO classroom? So one practice that I would suggest in any classroom for that matter is encourage the best questions, not just the best answers. I remember most of my senior leadership meetings that I used to have. I prized the leader in the room who could ask the best question, not just the best answers. I really was looking for a leader in my team to ask a question that none of us had thought about, to ask a question that challenged some of our assumptions. So I think we have to train our BPO students in the classroom to ask smart questions, not the cocky, showing off type of questions, but insightful questions, challenging questions that force us to question assumptions that help us differentiate between signal and noise. Second is a culture of error. Now, I know for all of us, professors, teachers, our education system has conditioned us to look on errors and mistakes as bad. I think that's a bad thing in the learning process, in the learning journey. I would like for our BPO classrooms to have a culture of error. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the faculty plays the role as a facilitator where every error is a learning opportunity, where every error is harvested for the students' benefit to help them on their learning journey, not to condemn them, not to tell them that they got a negative mark or missed out on their marks, but to have a system where students are free to experiment. You remember I gave you the example now of that 8 million to 900 million error. Now that can happen in your classroom because it's completely risk-free. In fact, I would argue it should happen in your classroom so that it does not happen when they go to their future employer. It should not happen when they're working for Deloitte, when they're working for Capgemini, when they're working for any of the top BPO companies of tomorrow. You want them to have the errors in your classroom. So I would urge all of us as faculty to ask ourselves, how can I create a safe environment where students feel free to make mistakes? They must feel free to make errors and use that as a learning tool. So I think for us faculty, it calls for a mind shift change to really see the riches that we can get from having this kind of a culture that accepts error as part of the learning journey. And of course, as I said earlier, anyone can teach. So if we can get students to drive some of the learning in the classroom, I love that movie Ratatouille, where the final, almost towards the end of the movie, you have the scenes where the question that the critic, the food critic says, I realized, I thought, great cooking could only be done by special people. Now he realizes that it's not limited to just ordinary human beings. In that movie, of course, it's a rat who does the great cooking. So I think the point for us is that, can we give responsibility for learning to students? So can we tell students, okay, we're going to discuss this topic, but you're going to lead the learning on that day. Or the 4 of you will have a group discussion and come and present to the class. So anyone can teach and everyone can learn. So I would say that requires us to, again, make a mindset change. Now, here again, I'm challenging some of the models of the education system. So it's not just relevant to the BPO classroom, it's relevant to all our classrooms. But education in India and in many other countries is built around a factory model. Now, these ladies who are processing whatever those widgets, every single widget is treated exactly the same. So you do exactly the same process to every single one. 1 million widgets pass through their hands. They will do exactly the same things to those 1 million widgets because it's a factory model. But imagine a medical model. Can you imagine a doctor or a surgeon telling every person who comes to in his surgery, please remove his adenoids and tonsils. Person A comes in, remove adenoids and tonsils. Person B comes in, remove adenoid and tonsils. Can never happen because every surgeon, every doctor is looking at a patient individually and asking what is this person's problem or opportunity, and therefore what treatment do I need to give. So for us in education, it's a massive revolution for us to make. Can we shift from a factory model to a medical model, where we treat the students in our classroom as unique, different individuals, each of them possibly needing different tweaks. And I know this is a challenge to do in our classrooms. We've got 40, 50 students. How am I going to kind of have a one-to-one kind of learning format? But I think the journey starts by asking the question, how can, and I think Ed also referred to this yesterday when he said that there may be different students on different paths with different skills. Some may be better suited. If you look at the BPO industry, I would look at some folk in my team and say, these guys are going to be very good at actually operating the process. But some of these guys, I can take and use them for knowledge transfer. They would do a phenomenal job with the client, understanding the client's knowledge and transferring that knowledge to us. Another set of folk, I would say, okay, these girls are excellent at being able to do quality. They have an eagle eye for detail. They are able to find out where errors could happen. So you must be looking for the same things in your classroom and asking yourselves, where would this girl fit in the BPO industry? Where would this student fit in the BPO industry? Is she good at process? Is she good at, designing a quality assurance process? So once you, or someone else excellent at client interaction, phenomenal at client interaction, she could go into account management in BPO. So if we think that through in the classroom, then our whole approach to working with those students, we try to build those strengths. We really convert the BPO classroom not into a standard 1 to 40 teaching, but really looking at, here are some folk who would be great at transition. Here are some folk who would be great in technology interface. Here are some folk who would be great in understanding financial dynamics. Here are some folk who will be excellent in fraud management, for example. So you're really looking for that in the classroom and changing the methodology so that you get that kind of thinking from students. Quick case study from real world. I remember one of the what I call nuclear bomb errors from one of my traditional transactional BPO journeys is we used to process payroll for lakhs of employees who used to get their pay slips processed at our BPO center and sent out. And in those days, I'm talking about many years ago, there were no e-pay slips. It was all physical pay slips. So physically, pay slips would be printed out. There would be an envelope. You would, stamp the address of the person and the name of the person that would be there on the envelope. And then the payslip would be inserted into that envelope and it would go out. And the nuclear bomb error is when the managing director's payslip goes to a territory executive, sales executive, and the territory sales executive payslip goes to the managing director, which means a payslip has got swapped. So the MD's cover had the territory sales executive's payslip, and the territory sales executive got to see the MD's salary. Now that was considered a nuclear bomb error because you had one really, really mad MD or chairman or CEO because he treated his salary as confidential, and very often because he was paid 300 times more than his junior employee, they really didn't want that information going. So this was like a fatal flaw. If a BPO company made this error, it was a disaster. You could lose the client and it really couldn't carry on. So this is a problem that I'd give to the team and say, I'm locking you in a room. You can't come out of the room until you tell me a mistake-proof way for sorting this process. Now, imagine you having this kind of a conversation with some of today's scenarios in your classroom. Give them a problem that some of the BPO companies are facing today and say, discuss this threadbare and come up with a mistake-proof solution. You're helping them think critically. You're helping them understand the finance processes. You're helping them understand quality. You're helping them collaborate and brainstorm. Now, eventually, my team came up with a very, very simple solution. I mean, anyone who wants to put it in the chat or unmute and give us a view on what the solution was. Okay. Not a very talkative audience today, huh? Poor me. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna keep persisting, and hopefully someone will unmute before we finish today. So my team came up with a very obvious solution once you think about it, which is to stop using envelopes where we were pasting the label on the cover and start using window envelopes. So window envelopes means the payslip itself inside has the address and the name, and that is seen through the envelope. So that's a solution which makes an error impossible. So that's what I call a mistake-proof solution. So I used to challenge my team saying, go and I'm not going to let you come out of that room till you come up with a solution like this. And really that problem thinking, solving mindset is what we need with our students in the BPO classroom. I thought it'd be a great idea to hear some of our students, the first batch which graduated at Holy Cross. So let's listen in.
So I'm someone who is, all for practical learning than theoretical learning. Therefore, I chose BCom BPO, and just as they promised me first year, all these 3 years, I think more than theoretical learning, there has been a lot of practical lessons in itself.
I thought that it would be very hard to study and I need to go tuitions too. But after seeing our staffs, facilitators, teachers, I was very secure with everyone. Whatever doubts we may ask, they just give a reply.
I'm very proud to say that I'm a BPO student. BPO is actually a best platform to build my future, especially for me to build my future.
I'm really thankful to the one who being given this course more practically, because I'm the one who loves to learn practically than theoretically.
We have very good staff members. They actually motivate us to involve in every activities. I want to thank Fernandez for giving this wonderful opportunity.
I'm always very proud when I listen to all of them, because I remember meeting these girls when they came in their first month of starting the BPO program, very shy, not wanting to talk, unwilling to come up front. I think when they graduated, we were not able to stop them coming onto the stage. And it was just, for my team and I, we were just looking with awestruck admiration at how much these young women had grown through the 3 years. So I think for us, the vision that I'm putting forward for all of us who are either teaching BPO or who are planning to teach BPO or literally any other program that we're teaching is, what is my vision as a faculty in the classroom? For a BPO classroom, for example, will I choose to be just a talent manager or a talent nurturer? So talent manager means that I'll manage to the marks. My students have to get good marks. I have to complete the curriculum. I have to answer all their questions. I have to correct the papers on time. When they ask me doubts, I have to answer the doubts. I have to ensure that they finish their assignments. I have to take attendance. I would say that's a talent manager approach. And I would urge all of us to challenge that mindset and say, can I be a talent nurturer? Can I really look at how I can let these girls and young men in my care for the 3 or 4 years that I have them, how can I really nurture their talent? And that means going beyond the subject. That means, pulling them up and saying, no, you have got to dress better. Pulling them up and saying, no, that's a mistake you made in your grammar. How would you say it correctly? Asking them to read. In fact, I would urge all of us running BPO classrooms and any other again to ensure that our students spend daily time reading the newspapers. And in a BPO classroom, the business newspapers. Are they reading the Economic Times? Are they reading the Business Line? Are they reading the Business Today? Are they reading blogs? Are they watching videos from some of the best business CEOs in the world? So much of learning is available, but can we make it a habit? That will happen only if I'm a talent nurturer. Otherwise, I will see this as distraction from my curriculum. It's taking away time from my curriculum. If I have a talent manager mindset, then any of these things for me is a distraction. But if I'm a talent nurturer, then these are powerful ways that I'm preparing my students for work and life. I often give the example of Arsene Wenger, who was, Arsenal's one of the most successful football managers. And there was a beautiful article that Keshava Guha had written in the Hindu when Arsene Wenger retired. So he said that there are 3 competing visions for football. When you play football, one is to see football as a business. And football, is a business. There's big money. So you can view football as a business. That's one vision. In which case your whole approach is driven to how do we make the most profit. The second competing vision is to treat football as entertainment. So you're there to please spectators. You want, exciting goals. You want great things happening at halftime. You want the stands to be, filled with color. So the approach, the whole, mechanics there are viewing football as a form of entertainment. But the third is viewing it as something joyful. As Arsene Wenger says, I am a facilitator of what is beautiful in man. And I think that is our vision for us as faculty, teachers, educators. Can we use the time to be facilitators of the something beautiful in these young men and women who come into our care? Can we use BPO? So I'm saying you can view BPO as a business, as a career, but you can also view BPO as a vehicle to teach them about life, to be better human beings, to work together well, to respect each other well, to listen better. There are so many things that you can use the BPO vehicle to fashion these young people, nurture them into being not just successful executives, leaders tomorrow, but better human beings. And I think that is our vision as faculty. Finally, I'll close. One of my favorites pictures always is a customer mindset. If we can teach our students to have a customer mindset, where very often the customer is put in a dangerous place, whereas we should challenge our students to think about the customer and how they can add value. And in turn, we as faculty have got to think about the employers who are going to, give our students jobs. We have to think about what they need and keep them in the classroom constantly if we want a successful BPO classroom. So there's a human being at the end of every transaction. Somebody is, getting paid. Somebody is receiving a loan. Somebody is being harassed for some. There is a human being. So how can you build? Ed yesterday was referring to empathy. Nalan also spoke about that emotional quotient. So how can we get that to be part of the BPO classroom? I would also urge real life picture at one of the BPO facilities that I worked with. I had an opportunity to take this picture from a vantage point. And what struck me after I took the picture was that it looked very much like prison bars. And I think it's important to help our students understand that they're not just going into a workplace. If it's just a workplace where they're going to make money and earn their living, it could end up being something with prison bars. I think we should be able to tell students that not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. I think that is our challenge as faculty, as educators, to help our students discover themselves, develop, and unleash their true potential. Thank you all. Thank you so much for this time that you've given me, for patiently listening to me. And God bless each and every one of you in this journey, not just of building BPO classrooms, but of any classroom that you're teaching. May you be fantastic talent nurturers. God bless.
Thank you, sir. That was an excellent, explanation of the current BPO industry's requirement. And I would extend my thankful to Dr. S. Murugesan, Madam Anandi Dharnitharan, Madam Jayashakti, and Mr. Sundar Murugan. Thank you so much, sir. Right. So here is a question for you from one of the audience. So, shall I, sir?
Yes, please, Alisha. Thank you.
All right. So audience, please be ready with the question. So we'll be clarifying all your doubts. So here's the question. So the students will do internship to know the business environment. But is it possible for the BPO students to do BPO projects, okay, as a BPO company while they are studying? So that's the question. If yes, in what ways they could start by outsourcing internally as a shared service center? This is a question from one of the audience.
No, it's a very, very coincidental that this question is being asked, because one of the proposals that I discussed with the principal at Holy Cross, Sister Bridget, was, can we start our students working on live projects? Which means we talk to companies. It need not be very confidential work. It need not be very, even critical work, but simple transactions. If they can give it to us into our BPO classrooms where it's live projects, that would be phenomenal. And I've already begun the process of talking to a few of my colleagues from the BPO industry to try and get something that we can start doing. And if the BPO classroom can, as the questioner said, thank you so much for a wonderful creative question. I think that's the kind of creative thinking we need to transform the BPO classroom. If we can get the students to literally position themselves as a students shared services. So Alisha, that will be a different SSS. So students shared services. Then we really have a win-win opportunity, because not only are the students learning about industry, but industry is investing in their future employees. They are really investing in their future employees. So we could give companies who are willing to do this first preference on day one for interviews, and tell them that, look, you come first and interview on day one, and you'll get the students. Anyone who says no to you only will take another job. So I think that's a wonderful question, a great suggestion, and coincidentally something that I have already discussed with Sister, which we will start at Holy Cross, and hopefully wherever else we are able to get a BPO kind of program going.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, audience. I could see a few replies from the audience side, and thank you, Mr. Shanmugha. We would really grateful that we'll definitely follow the feedback link very shortly. But if possible, if you could unmute yourself and you can share the feedback on spot, if possible. May I request Mr. Shanmugha? If possible, can you please unmute and you can share your feedback on spot?
Okay, may I, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Good evening to all. My name is Siva Sakti. Okay, I have ordered my mother's name. My mother's name is Jaya, so Jaya Sakti. I think you called my name.
Yes, ma'am, we said thank you.
Sir, it was a very nice session. Really happy to attend this good program. Among these 3 days, this day was very useful, really. Openly, I would like to say I had a small work, but I couldn't escape from your words. It was very nice to hear. So I really...
I must thank Shiva Shakti so much. That is very, very gracious feedback.
Sorry, sir, Jaya Shakti.
I think she said her name is Shivashakti and that
Okay. Yes, sir.
title
She
was
has.
showing Jaya Shakti. Yeah.
Yes, sir. She has rejoined
Sorry,
again.
sorry.
Jay Shakti, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Yeah, please.
So I was
So
just saying
finally,
thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
it
Please.
was very nice session, sir. Really, I'm happy to being here, being with you. It's very understandable. Your words was very understandable. Thank you so much for your words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was just saying, very, very gracious of you. Thank you very much. I'm glad that it was of value.
I think you are a good teacher. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I wouldn't say, yeah, all of you are the ones who do it day in and day out. I come occasionally to do, but I do love the fact that I was able to spend this time with all of you. Thank you so much for that very, very encouraging feedback.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mahesh Kumar sir, Ramesh Kumar sir, Lalita ma'am. Thank you so much, Veera Kanmani ma'am, Dr. Subhatra. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We have a few more questions. So shall I?
Yes, please.
So shall I go ahead with the questions?
Yes, please, Alisha. Thank you.
Okay. So we were talking about in teachers' point of view, student centric, right? But when it comes to the industry, it is completely customer centric approach, right? But in BPO industry, one of the questions raised by the audience is, since the BPO industry, most of the time we work for clients, but we don't know who are they. So how the students can practice this customer centric approach?
I don't know whether I followed the question correctly, but in most cases, when you're working in the BPO industry, you absolutely know the client that you're working for. When I say client, I'm talking about the organizational client. So you will know, for example, that I'm servicing, let us say, Tesla, or I'm servicing Apple, or I'm servicing Walmart. So it is absolutely necessary for every person to know which client they are serving. Unless, of course, it's a defense-related contract or, Ministry of Defense in some countries. I've done some work with the Ministry of Defense in Singapore, and I know at that time they did have certain restrictions on some amount of information. But otherwise, most BPO folk will absolutely know who their client is. Individual customers, they usually get that information when a call pops up or when a transaction pops up. So I do think they will have the opportunity to be customer-centric. Now, for example, when I used to serve, Ed gave you that example yesterday. Ed and I used to work with Unilever. Now, I used to ensure that all my teams, wherever they were in the world, understood their customer. We would very often have a discussion saying, what is happening in Unilever's business? What are their products? What are the challenges they are facing? Very often, I would know more about Unilever than the Unilever guys. So I would tell them that, you are acquiring this company in Poland or you're rolling out this product, and they'll say, woo, how did you know that? Because I make it my business to know about my customer's business. And I would encourage all the BPO students, right from the start, look at some of the big engagements. It's all in the public domain. We know which companies have outsourced from different countries to which providers here. So as a practice exercise, try and look at one of those customers. Take Walmart, for example. Walmart has come into India. It has traditionally been a brick and mortar, and it is competing with people like Amazon and Flipkart. How do we understand their business? As if I was a BPO provider to Walmart, how would I do my homework to understand Walmart's business? How could I make them have an edge over Amazon or over Flipkart? So I think it is good to have that customer centricity mindset. And usually you will not have a problem knowing who your customer is, because that's part of the knowledge transfer that is done right on day one before you hit the production floor. I hope I answered the question right. I apologize if I didn't understand the question correctly.
Yes, sir, you are. Thank you. And we have one more question from the audience, from Dr. Mahalakshmi ma'am.
Yes.
So how do you think the students would be placed soon after they graduate? Point is like, is there any growth prospects in the career?
Let me stretch that question a little bit. Okay, so I'm actually taking the question beyond the scope of maybe what the questioner asked. And the reason I'm doing that is, I think colleges, faculty, everybody, we should stop thinking in terms of placement season. Very often we start talking to companies and engaging with industry just at that time of placement. and we say, oh shucks, now placement is going to come, better call this guy, better invite these people, and we get all into the placement mania. I would suggest that should be ongoing. It starts from day one. So then I think you are increasing the chances of industry knowing the students knowing the industry, so that placement at the end is almost automatic. I am looking forward to the day that in our BPO classrooms, the offer letters are given by the companies in year one. That is my goal for our BPO classrooms, that I want offer letters to come from companies in the first year, not in the third year. So that the students know, the industry already knows that these students are such gold dust because they're building their communication, they're understanding the processes. So here's your offer letter well in advance. That should be our goal. So that's how I think it will happen quickly. We should move away from the mindset of treating placement as an event that happens in the third year. We should have that engagement with industry right from day one and get that connect to happen, so that I'm guaranteeing to you that if we do some of the things that we have all been discussing over these parts, industry will be storming the gates of our colleges because they want talent. They want great talent. So if we can do that, they're finding it difficult. Many of the places we do interviews for 500 people, 600 people, and hire 2, 3. I have been in processes where we started the funnel of candidates at 600 and hired 2 or 3. That's all. And that's not because we want that. We want to hire a lot more, just that the quality was not there. So I think if colleges can do a better job of understanding those JDs, and that's why I told you, don't begin designing curriculum based on university requirements. The universities are not going to hire your students. Remember, no university that you are affiliated to is going to pay your students' salaries. It's industry that's going to pay their salaries. So we have to start from their requirements. Understand, by this, I don't mean that academics is less. No, please don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is reverse engineer, because that's where we want our students to get jobs. So I'm not suggesting that we completely abandon all the academic knowledge and only look at industry stuff. No, we do have to help students get that firm academic foundation. But we really have to get this industry connect as a continuous process, not just placement. And I think long answer to the questioner's question, but I think that's what will help our students get placed sooner, better salaries and better companies.
Thank you, sir. You have answered well. Before going for the final question, may I request Madam Josephine to play the video? But sir, we have a few more questions.
Sure. I'm always ready and willing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Audience, please come in the chat box with your questions. Sir, one last question from one of the audience, sir.
Yes, Alicia.
Sir, is it about ARO culture? It's how important for a student to practice this ARO culture, accountability, responsibility, and ownership at the classroom.
I think the answer is in the question. It is, absolutely critical. The only challenge that I would give to all of us educators is that, right from school, we talk about wanting our children to be accountable, to be responsible, to take ownership. But everything we do our systems, processes in school, college, is contrary to that accountability, responsibility, and ownership. We are constantly hijacking children and young people's desire to have accountability, responsibility, and ownership, even though we desire it for them. So I would say now, for example, how far are we from a college where we stop taking attendance? Now, please, all of you who have fainted and fallen off your chairs, please climb back on. But I'm saying, suppose we had a college where we don't take attendance. It's up to the student to come. That is training the student to have accountability, responsibility, and ownership. Because now the student is coming for attendance, not for the learning. But if I am able to make the classroom so engaging, so interactive, so full of learning that students want to come to my classroom, not just for attendance, then I am really creating accountability, responsibility, and ownership. So my challenge to all of us faculty is, if we want that to happen in our students, we have to change ourselves. And the way we view students, the way we respect them, the way we treat them, if we can change that, then I think we'll go much, much further in building that accountability, or the ARO that we all so much desire.
Thank you, sir. Audience, any questions from your side? Before that, this is a gentle reminder about tomorrow's program. We have an excellent speaker, Mr. Stephen Dick. He's a Senior Vice President and Branch Head, HSBC Chennai. So please make use of the opportunity and please come up with your questions. Thank you, Suma ma'am.
No, ma'am, I don't have any questions, ma'am.
I said thank you. You have came in the chat box.
Yeah, I think for all those of you who have given your comments in the chat box, very, very encouraging feedback from all of you. Really, really grateful for your kind words, very gracious. Thank you so much.
Yes, Angel, please go ahead.
Actually, Leo, I do have a question for you.
Yes, please.
You've had a fantastic career in the BPO sector and have come across huge number of people working in the sector. So even Ed spoke about it yesterday, the interpersonal skills, the soft skills. Was that one of your trigger to starting Talentees amongst your other triggers?
I think we overrate hard skills. I think most of us realize, whether it's in work or home or colleges, it is the simple things, being able to get along well, understand others, be kind, be respectful, be hardworking, be self-disciplined. These are the things that ultimately make the difference, not just to success, but to having a meaningful life. And I think for me, that really helped narrow down what I wanted to spend the second life, as I like to call it. And therefore, Talentees really is trying to do both, to give young people skills that they need to be successful, but also value systems that help them build their compass right and help them, make an impact, make a difference in their workplaces, in their communities, and in their homes. So yes, it certainly helped, make the decision on what I would choose to spend, and it's been very fulfilling and very meaningful.
Thank you, Leo.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Angel, for the question. Is there any questions from the audience side? Okay, so I would like to Holy Cross College and Talentees creating tomorrow's leaders today. Thank you so much, organizers, and we will see you tomorrow. Same link, but timing is 5:30. Right? Please log in by 5:30. We have a wonderful speaker. Again, I'm reminding you, this is Mr. Stephen Dick from HSBC Bank. So please make use of it.
And a big thank you from me to all the participants. Thank you all for patiently, listening to me. I know I took a long time talking. I wish we could do this more interactively, but thank you so much for your patience. And a huge thank you to Sister Bridget, to Josephine ma'am, and all the staff of Holy Cross College who have been our wonderful supporters, encouraging and making things like this possible. Thank you all so much. Thank you for having me. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
dear sir. You are really a very powerful speaker.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very, very sweet of you to say that. Thank you.
We enjoyed your session actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, organizers. Thank you, participants. Please stay safe at home. Thank you.
God bless. God bless everyone. Bye-bye.
Feedback link, ma'am.
Feedback link, I think, Alisha, someone's asking. Are we giving that at the end?
At the end. Yes, sir. We will be sharing the feedback link at the end, sir.
End meaning after the 5-day program.
After 5-day program.
On Friday,
yes.
ma'am?
Yeah, on Friday.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.